So, Professor Sushma Parekh, she will be speaking on the karma theory in Zionism. So, Professor Dr. Srinivasan Iyer, he spoke on the karma yoga, but Professor Parekh will be confining herself to the karma doctrine in Jainism. Well, she teaches Jainism at Claremont School of Theology, where a graduate program for Jaina studies is being imparted. Also, she teaches Jainism to the young, to the youth, and she is basically engineer, a principal engineer at. She is in the R&D section, working on innovative motion control technology meant for the commercial and military aircraft. Apart from that, she is interested in academics. So that's why we are having her here. We should salute her for her academic interest, apart from and apart from the professional busy schedules that she has in the aviation technology and all that. So we are happy to have her here because she teaches Jainism. So we'll be learning a lot from her on the karma theory in Jainism. Apart from the academics, she is on a mission of supporting spiritual movement to bring about inner transformation in human beings through knowledge, meditation, and selfless service. So, lot of work, madam, you are having. So, really hats off to you for devoting your time to good activities and welcoming once again to Philosophy Family. We all wish to listen to your lecture on the karma theory in Jaina. Welcome, madam. Over to Professor Parekh for the lecture.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Narayan sir, for kind introduction, kind words. Thank you, Srinivasan sir, for making me part of the Philosophy Family. It has been almost like 3-4 months we've been talking, and I was not able to come in December to have the same lecture because of some busy schedule. So I really appreciate everyone's support and welcoming me here. Today we'll talk about karma theory. I'm going to share my desktop. Can you see my screen?
Madam, screen is there, but nothing is visible on it. It's completely dark.
Oh, okay. I'm sharing probably my second screen. Hold on, please. Sorry.
Now visible, madam. Now visible.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, madam. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, dear. Thank you. So today we'll talk about karma theory with respect to Jain religion. It's a philosophical discourse to develop virtues of glad acceptance and equanimity for social peace and harmony. So I won't be able to go into too much detail in karma theory today, but I will talk about also how we can apply this karma theory in our daily life to bring virtues of glad acceptance and equanimity in our every action situation. Today's talk from Srinivasan was so spiritually uplifting, talking about karma yoga and how we can do the service to God as well as humanity, bringing all these virtues in ourselves. Like when we do the service to God and service to humanity, is basically our sole purpose is how we can purify ourselves, how we can bring these virtues of equanimity, getting rid of attachment, aversion, and bringing the bliss and happiness within ourselves. So same thing with the karma theory, how we can imbibe those principles and how we can apply in our life to bring the peace and harmony. So that's what we will talk today. I will talk about a little bit of karma theory also. We'll go through what is the importance of doctrine of karma, why we need to learn, what are the benefits of it, what are the problems we're going to solve with this karma theory, and then we'll go into the definition of what does karma mean in terms of Jain philosophy, in Jain philosophy, and how the bondage of karma happens, how we bring the karma to ourselves. Then we'll look at the different types of karma and effect, and then the last few slides will be on how we can apply the karma theory to bring peace and harmony in our life. So why we need to know karma or karma theory? Because, we have seen some students do very well in class while others struggle. Some earn money easily while others struggle. Some live longer. Some die at early age. There is nothing but suffering in some people's life while others enjoy their life. So why there is such a contrast in life? What are the root causes and how that can be overcome? Like whenever something happens to us, we try to blame situation, we try to blame ourselves, we feel bad about it, why me, why me, why me? But in reality, karma theory will answer what is the reason for all these things. Once we understand that, it will be very easy to accept. So these are all the external situations and how we can relate our karmas to this. It will help us. That's the first reason. And the second reason is related to the philosophy of Jainism. There are two major aspects in Jain philosophy: soul and non-soul, or jiv and ajiv. So atma, soul means atma, and non-soul in this context of karma theory is karma. So when Srinivasaji sir talked about karma, it's more of the action. But here, karma is something different which impurifies the soul. So we'll look at the definition of karma. There are total 9 fundamentals in Jainism: soul, non-soul, ashra. Ashra means influx of karma. Then punya. Punya means auspicious karma. Pap means inauspicious karma. Then samvar. Samvar means how we can stop this influx of karma to coming to ourselves. Nirjara. Nirjara means how to get rid of the karmas that we have accumulated so far. That is in our stock. And the bandha. Bandha means bondage. Bondage of karma to the soul. And then the moksha. Moksha means liberation. So these are the 9 fundamental reals in Jainism. Out of that, the karma theory deals with 2 major reals, which is soul and non-soul. And under non-soul, there are different types of non-soul, or the pudgal, or the matter, but we're going to talk about only the karmas here, which is a karma and vargana. I will talk into more detail. So to succeed in our campaign of freeing the soul from the bondage, we must know about soul and karma and their interrelationship. So we'll focus a little bit on how the karmas are formed and how they get bonded to soul and what we can do to get rid of the karma. And the other purpose of understanding the theory of karma. So basically 2 purposes: to understand what is happening to us in the external world, and the second one is to understand between the soul and non-soul, or the soul and the karma, their interaction, how the soul gets impure, and what we can do to purify ourselves, to get rid of karma, to attain the liberation. So to understand what is the non-soul or the matter, there are total 8 types of matter according to Jainism. And the soul and the matter, the total 6 substances in the universe according to Jainism. The soul, non-soul or the matter or the Pudgal. And the third one is medium of motion, Dharmastikai. Medium of rest, Adharmastikai. And then the space, the Akash. And the Kal means the time. So out of all these 6 universal substance, reals, soul and the matter, soul and the non-soul are the one they interact with each other. Other 4 are pure form and they just help soul and the matter in this process. They do not provide any kind of impurities to soul. So with that, the matter, the total 8 types of matter, there's a lot of different types, but the main are 8. Audarik Vargana, which is our body is made out of that Audarik Vargana, which is all matter that we all know, right? The soul is separate from body is matter, and that body is made up of Audarik Vargana. This is all our human body there. Vaikriya Vargana means a special body to heavenly and infernal beings. So there are there are 4 types of destinies that soul migrates. The first one is the human being. The second one is the heavenly souls. Third one is infernal or the hellish beings. And the fourth one is the all Tiriyanch being, all the animal being from 1 sense to all the way to the 5 sense, all the animal, they come in that too. So the Vaikriya Vargana, the Vaikriya body of heavenly souls and the infernal souls is made up of Vaikriya, while the physical body of human being is made of Audarik Vargana. Aharak Vargana makes a special separate body to spiritually advanced monks, which can be sent a long distance. So for example, if monk, they have a special power that they have some questions and they want to ask to spiritually advanced monks or to go and talk to God or talk to Bhagwan, then they form this special body called the Aharak body. And with that, they can travel, they can ask questions, and they can come back. So that's the third type of Vargana of the matter. Then the Tejas Vargana is responsible for heat and the digestion power. That we all have that Tejas Vargana with us. Bhasha Vargana is responsible for speech. So whenever we are talking, whatever that bhasha, the language that coming out of our sound that is coming out of us, it's made out of bhasha Vargana. That is also matter. Mana Vargana, which is a physical mind, responsible for our physical mind. So according to Jainism, the mind is made out of this Mano Vargana. Whenever we start thinking, we collect all this Mano Vargana, we form the mind and our thinking process start. So that is also matter, Pudgal, Ajiv, non-soul. And then the Shvaso-Chavas Vargana, the breathing in and out, that whatever we do, that is also a type of matter. And then the last one here is the Karman Vargana, which is made out of karmic body or the karma. So that is what we're going to really be interested in understanding the karma theory, this Karman Vargana, a type of matter, which is very, very, very we cannot even see through the microscope. It's very subtle, very low, and it's all around us. It's everywhere. It's in the pure form. And then we look at how we get attached, how we attract this Karman Vargana, what we do to attract this Karman Vargana and form the karma. We'll look at that. So that is the basic, just a very high level about the matter or the non-soul. So now what is karma? So karma is like a Karman particles are subtle, invisible, floating around us in the universe and are in the pure form. They cannot be even seen through the most powerful microscope. So now what happens is, whenever we have our likes and dislikes, that is in the form of attachment and aversion, raga, dvesha, work as a magnet and attracts this Karman particle and the karmas are formed. So who is responsible? It is nothing but we are responsible for bringing the karma to ourselves. So day in and out, how much we do the likes and dislikes, how much attachment and aversion we have, knowingly, unknowingly. When we are in the ignorant state, we are completely unaware of it. But at least while understanding the karma theory, while learning all the scriptures, we do understand now, hey, I'm responsible for my own karma. I'm responsible bringing those karma to myself through my own attachment and aversion. So even we have that knowledge, we can apply, right, throughout the day and night. Okay, if I'm doing any kind of raga, dvesha, likes and dislikes, it's going to result to my karmas, and I'm supposed to watch for it. I'm trying to stay in the state of equanimity whenever it's happening. I'll talk a little bit more how these likes and dislikes come to us. Whatever the stocked karma we have, and how because of that the present likes and dislikes are coming, and what we can do. We'll go into more little bit detail later on. So basically the karma, the reason the karmas are formed is because of our impure feelings of likes and dislikes, attachment and aversion. As a result of that, we attract the karman particles that are all around us, and the karmas are formed and they get attached to the soul. It does not become like a one. Attachments, still it has a distinct properties, right? Karmas are made out of pudgal, the matter. It has its own characteristics, while soul, pure consciousness, has a different properties. Knowledge, virtue, bliss, peace, all these are virtues of soul, while the virtues of karma is nothing but touch, taste, smell, and it's a matter. So even though they are staying with each other together, but then they don't become one. So we can work on it to get rid of that karma, and we can look at, what are the different ways we can get rid of those karmas. So when the karmas are formed, it stays with the soul for some time. And when we get rid of this karma completely, we purify ourselves, and then we become Siddha Bhagwan. So according to Jainism, Siddha Bhagwan are the one who are liberated soul. Once we liberate, we never come down to the cycles of birth and death, right? We just completely liberate. We live in the Siddha Shila, which is the abode of universe, and we never come back. And the next one, it's called the Arihanta Bhagwan. Arihanta Bhagwan are the one where they have gotten rid of part of the karmas, 4 destructive karmas. I'll talk a little bit more on that, destructive karmas and the non-destructive karmas. So once we get rid of the destructive karmas, destructive karmas are the one they destroy. They obscure our virtues of knowledge, perception, bliss, conduct and faith, power. All that is because of the destructive karma. So once we get rid of those destructive karma, our virtues are manifested, and then we become Arihanta Bhagwan. So according to Jainism, Arihanta Bhagwan and the Siddha Bhagwan are the God, and then it shows the path, how to liberate ourselves, how to do the spiritual progression to attain the Arihanta and the Siddha state. Otherwise, all others are called Acharya, or the one who help us, the monks, different level of monks. So Arihanta Bhagwan, Siddha Bhagwan, Acharya, Upadhyaya and Sadhu. These are the 5 supreme beings that are saluted in Jainism. And the highest state is Siddha Bhagwan, where we have gotten rid of all the karmas and the liberated soul. So coming back to Karman particles. So the Karman particles cannot be seen under microscope. This is just the slide showing it. Here the Tirthankar Bhagwan, Kevali Bhagwan, Tirthankar Bhagwan are the one who have attained the pure knowledge and the perception. So pure knowledge means there is no more jnana varaniya karma, knowledge obscuring karma, perception obscuring karma. But kevala jnana, in that kevala jnana, you perceive everything, you know everything through your own soul power. It's coming within, it's without any use of senses. So that's where Tirthankar Bhagwan, they have perceived, they have seen these Karman particles in their knowledge, and it's all written in the scripture. And that's where we are learning that Karman particles, when they interact with the soul, the karmas are formed. Now we look at the definition of Bhava Karma and Dravya Karma. This is very, very important definition, in the karma theory. When the karmas are formed, we looked at, right, the karman particles are coming and getting attached to the soul. So when it gets attached to the soul, it still retains its property, the karmic, the pudgal, the non-matter property, and that is called dravya karma. While the bhava karma means our feelings of attachment, aversion, as a result of karma coming to ourselves, we have all those feelings, right? Because of that feeling, we got the karma to ourselves. So those feelings, that is happening in the soul, but those are impure feelings, and that is called the bhava karma. So once we understand what is a bhava karma and dravya karma, then it's very easy to understand the karma theory. What is happening to me is basically nothing but interaction. Dravya karma, which is karmas coming to surface, giving its fruit, and as a result of that, we exhibit this bhava karma, the feelings of attachment and aversion, and more intense feeling of attachment and aversion we have, we're going to bring more new karma to ourselves. We're going to bring more of that karman particles, and then it gets attached to the soul, and then again this transmigration continues, the cycle continues. So bhava karma coming to surface as a result of bringing dravya karma, bhava karma, dravya karma, and then soul just continues in the cycle of transmigration, in purification. So what do we have to do to get rid of this cycle is nothing but to watch our bhava karma, these feelings of attachment and aversion, that acts as a glue, right? If we don't have a glue, then, for example, if you take the stamp or the envelope and you have a stamp on that, so how the stamp gets attached to the envelope? If we have a glue on that, it really gets attached to the envelope. But if there is no glue, and if you put the stamp on the top of envelope, the stamp will just fall off because there is no glue. So same thing here, that glue is nothing but our bhava karma. If there is glue, then we're going to attach more dravya karma. But if there is no glue, then the dravya karma, it might come there, but it won't stay with soul for a long time. So for example, when we become Arihanta Bhagwan, when we get rid of these 4 karmas, then the karma is still coming there because of the mind, body, speech activity. This is another criteria. If we have a mind, body, speech activity and the bhava karma, the feelings, then the karmas are coming. So the Arihanta Bhagwan, they are in the human form. They have gotten rid of 4 destructive karmas, but the remaining 4 non-destructive karmas are still with them, like a body and Ayushya karma and all that thing. And they have mind also. So because of that, mind, body, speech activity is still there. They are bringing the dravya karma. They are bringing the karman particles. But since there is no bhav karma, there is no attachment of anger, passions, anger, ego, deceit, greed, it comes and it just goes away right away. In ek samay it comes and it goes away. It's a very small fraction of the time. So once we understand the basic definition of dravya karma and bhav karma, now we will look at karmic bondage. What happens? How we get bonded with this karma. So due to soul's delusion or ignorance, lack of self-restraint, unawareness, passions, activities of body, mind, speech. So these are the 5 main causes for bringing the karma to ourselves. So one of the things we looked at was the passion, anger, ego, deceit, greed, attachment, aversion. But in addition to that, we do have these 5 causes. So in Tattvartha Sutra, it is a Jain scripture, sacred literature of Jainism written by Acharya Sri Umaswati Ji Maharaj back in 200 to 400 AD. It's written in Sanskrit. So in that Adhyay 8, Gatha 1, it says that Mithya Darshana Virati Pramada Kashaya Yoga Bandha Hetavaha. So Mithyatva, Avirati, Pramad, Kashay, and Yoga. These are the 5 causes of bondage. So what is the Mithyatva? Mithyatva means wrong belief, delusion, or ignorance. So Mithyatva is the first one where, when we, in the beginning, it starts with what is right God, what is right Guru, what is right Dharma. If we had that kind of understanding, that is called the relative point of view, the Vyavhar or the Samyak Darshan, the right faith. But the absolute, the transcendental point of view, the right faith is nothing but who am I? What is my nature? We just don't realize, I'm a soul, I'm a pure, powerful, peaceful soul. In and day out activities, we're so much attached with your body, and we say, body is me. Everything is happening. Oh, Sushma, someone says something to Sushma, we think, oh, it's me, it's happened to me. And then we get hurt, we get kind of, insulted, or we feel bad about it. And this is all delusion, this is all ignorance. So when we get attached to our body, and after that, everything outside body, family, wealth, power, this and that, everything me and mine, I and mine, it's all associated with our body and outside. So that is all Mithyatva. That is all delusion. That is all ignorance. And because of that, that is the worst enemy of us that brings the karma to ourselves. And from time immemorial, we've been just so much involved in this kind of delusion, in this ignorance, that we are just not aware of who we are. And first thing is we have to work on that and develop that faith that I'm a pure, powerful, peaceful soul, and everything else is not me. So doing that discrimination, doing that Bheda Gnan, that body is not mine, even the thoughts are not mine. We looked at thoughts. Thoughts is nothing but what? It's made out of matter. And then feelings, that whatever impure feelings are coming to me, it is coming in me, it is part of me as a soul, but that is transient, it comes and goes, and it's because of the karmas coming to surface and giving its fruit. That's why I'm getting those impure feelings, and that is not me also. So all that thing, once we understand, once we try contemplating upon it and trying to do the introspection and trying to work on that, I as a soul separate from all these things, and that's where we start developing the right faith. But until that time, we are in the deep delusion, we are in ignorance, and we bring the karma to ourselves, and that's the karmic bondage happens. So day in and night, we can introspect, we can observe, we can be aware of it. How many times I remember that I'm a pure, powerful soul, and how many times I was just attached to everything, whatever I'm doing. So that we can watch ourselves and find out more we are aware of ourselves. That's where our mithyatva, the wrong faith, is going away, and we are developing the right faith, which is a Samyak Darshan, right faith. And that is the first step towards liberation, having that Samyak Darshan. So that's the first reason, mithyatva. The second is avirati, lack of self-restraint. So we do need some kind of restraint. We need some kind of niyam in our daily life. And that's how our spiritual journey will start. More kind of self-restraint we develop, that will bring discipline, and slowly it will bring us purification. We start in the body, in the mind, like we do the meditation, we do some kind of upvas, eating 1 time, 2 time, or complete upvas without eating any food. All this is nothing but the purification of body and purification of mind that will take us toward inner journey, where we can do more swadhyay, more repentance, and more of letting Bheda Gnan, discrimination of me and body and all that thing, that will start. So the second step is avirati, more we have self-restraint, will reduce the karmic bondage. The third one is very, very important, the pramad, unawareness or unmindfulness. Here pramad is not the definition of, I'm unaware of my other activities, or I'm not in the mindful present tense. Sure, that's how the journey will start, being mindful, being in the present and not being in the past or the future. So first practice is to be mindful of present tense, bringing ourselves to the present so that our mind is not in the past and future and having past and future thoughts. So as we start bringing present tense and being mindful, then slowly we can be aware of who am I, what is my nature. I'm a pure, powerful, peaceful soul, and just being there, abiding in the self. So that will start. So the third cause is pramad, not knowing who am I, what is my purpose here, but getting involved into the outside activities and fully involved in there. So that is the another one that brings the karmic bondage. The fourth one is kashai, the passions, anger, ego, deceit, greed. These are the four basic passions that acts as a glue that we looked at in the previous slide, bhava karma. So because more intense anger, ego, deceit, greed we have, we're going to bring more karma to ourselves and it will stay with us for longer time. So it's directly proportional to the intensity of the passion. So for example, there are four different types of intensities under passion. Ananta anubandhi, that means if we have an intense type of passion, we're going to bind the life of hellish beings. We go in naraka, hell, right? So that's the highest intense passion. The second one is apratyakhani, which is a little bit less than the intense one. There we can be human being, or we can even take the vows and all that thing. So apratyakhani, pratyakhani, sanjwalan. Sanjwalan is the really mildest kind of passion. So according to Jainism, the spiritual progression starts at stage 4 when we get rid of this mithyatva and when we have a right faith, samyak darshan. But from the total 14 stages of spiritual progression, the fourth stage is where we attain samyak darshan, right faith, getting rid of mithyatva. But from stage 4 to stage 12 is nothing but we are working on getting rid of this kashai, these passions and the intensity. When we come to the fourth stage of spiritual progression, we have gotten rid of those intense type of passion, ananta anubandhi, anger, ego, deceit, greed. But from 4th to 12, we are working just nothing but making it milder, getting rid of finally. And once we get rid of these passions completely, which is part of the mohaniya karma, then other 3 remaining karmas, which are the jnana varaniya, darshana varaniya, and antara, will go away and we attain the kevala jnana, absolute knowledge. So the point here is how important it is to work on these passions and to get rid of these passions and attain the purification and ultimate liberation. So the fourth door to get the karmic bondage is kashaya. The fifth one is yoga, the activities of mind, body, speech. So this is, even though it's related to the physical body and the matter and all that thing, but they are directly proportional. More activities of mind, body, speech we have, we're going to bring more karman particle to ourselves, and more karman particle come to us, we're going to have the karmic bondage. Of course, it's a function of passion also. So we have to watch. That's why we observe maun, right? Silence. Sometime throughout the day we observe maun, we do meditation, we do yoga. All that thing is nothing but helping us to bring the less karma to ourselves. So in summary, mithyatva, avirati, pramad, kashaya, yoga. These are the 5 doors through which we constantly bring karma to ourselves. Now, once we bring the karma to ourselves, what happens to us? What kind of internal, this is all internally happening, even though it's related to the matter, but it's good to understand, then we really know in each and every situation when I exhibit those passions, anger, ego, deceit, greed, what is happening, those karman particles all around us, they are coming to me, they're getting attached to the soul, and these 4 aspects of bondage is happening. What is it? And again, Tattvartha Sutra, Adhyay 4, Gatha 4 says, Prakriti, Sthitya, Nubhava, Pradeshasta, Dvidhaya. That means Prakriti, Pradesh, Sthiti, and Anubhag. These are the 4 aspects of bondage. So we'll look at what does that mean. Prakriti bandha. Prakriti bandha means type of karma. So what are those different type of karma? So we'll go through those different types. So when we bring the karma to ourselves, when we bring the karman vargana to ourselves as a result of our anger, ego, deceit, greed, and activities of mind, body, speech, we bring this karman vargana, that there are 8 different types are bonded to the soul based on our intention, based on what are we doing at that time. So I will talk more detail on those, but the type are nothing but Nanavarniya, Darshanavarniya, Mohaniya, Antaray, Ayushanam, Kotra, and Vedaniya. So out of that, 7 karmas are constantly we are bringing to ourselves. Only the Ayushya karma, life determining karma, is the only one that happens once in a lifetime. And that one only happens, according to Jainism, when we pass about 2/3 of our lifespan. So for example, if I'm going to live for 100 years, so 66 years, after we pass 66 years, in that year, I'm going to bring my Ayushya karma. It might happen any time. That's why it says, keep our bhav, our feelings pure all the time as much as possible, or we do all this restraint, constant ourselves doing all these different type of upvas and the tithis and all that thing is nothing but to stay in the shubha bhav, good auspicious bhav, because we don't know when we're going to bring the that life determining karma of the next life in this life. So the type of karma is happening every time throughout the day based on our actions of mind, body, speech, and the associated passions. Pradesha bandha, quantity of karma. So how many karma are we going to bring to ourselves? The quantity means like 100 particles, 1,000 particles, 10,000 particles, 100,000 particles. Intense anger, we're going to bring large quantity of karma to ourselves. Mild anger, ego, deceit, greed, passions, we're going to bring the less karma to ourselves. So, but whenever we exhibit those passions, we are bringing all these things to ourselves. So the quantity of karma is proportional to the, again, intensity of our emotions, the feelings. The sthiti bandha, duration of attachment of karma. Now, how long this karma will stay with us, with my soul? When we exhibit any kind of passion and we have mind, body, speech activity, when we bring those karma, again, it depends on the intensity. Intense the passion, the duration of attachment of karma will be longer. So it could stay billions of years, millions of years. The Mohaniya karma is the longest, it stays with us maximum the 70 Koda Kodi Sagaropam, which is a long time. It's like a billions of years. It could stay with us. But again, there are ways how we can get rid of it. So basically, the bottom line here is the duration of attachment depends on the intensity of our passion. So if we have a milder, it will be less duration. It will stay for maybe, like 1 year, 10 year, 100 year, or it will come now and it will get off right away. So all that thing is based on the passion. Then the last one is the Anubhaga bandha, intensity. One was a duration, the other is intensity of attachment. What that means is it will stay with the soul, and when that karma comes to surface and give its fruit, that time, what kind of suffering I have? It could be good or bad. I could be so much spiritually inclined. Why we are listening to all these things today? Why are we so much interested in understanding spirituality? Because we have done something good in the past with interest, with understanding, to find out, how I can purify my soul. And those karmas are coming to surface, and that's why we all are here and we are interested in understanding. At the same time, some people are not interested. They spend their time in watching TV, going to movie, doing all these other parties and drinking and doing all these things, because when they brought karma to themselves, at that time, their intention was different. Their activities were different. And that's why when it comes to surface, it makes us behave like that. So, and the intensity is also proportional to the passion we had at that time. So the duration, intensity, and quantity, they all are proportional to the intensity of the passion we exhibiting at this time. The first two, the Prakriti Bandh and the Pradesh Bandh, is happening in karmas, while the Sthiti Bandh and the Anubhag Bandha is happening in the soul. So those are related to our passion. The first two are related to mind, body, speech activities. We can go much more detail, but with the limitation of time, I'm just covering just the surface here at this time. And if you are interested, we can go in more detail next time. The next one, Tattvartha Sutra, again, Adhyay 8, Gatha 5. Here we are talking about 8 types of karmas and their name and what does that mean. So the Jnana Darshana Varana Vedaniya Mohaniya Ishka Nama Gotraha Antarayaha. So these are all the name of 8 karmas, and the names are Jnana Varniya, Darshana Varniya, Mohaniya, Antaray, Nam Gotra, and Ayushya. So in English, destructive karmas, the Ghati karma, are 4 types. Those are knowledge obscuring karma, which is the Jnana-Varniya karma. Second one is a perception obscuring karma, Darshana-Varniya karma, energy obstructing karma, Antaraya karma, and the deluding karma, Mohaniya karma. So these are all called Ghati karma, or the destructive karmas. These are the most harmful to us, to soul, because they obscure our virtues. Knowledge virtue is getting obscured by the knowledge obscuring karma. Perception virtues is getting obscured by the perception obscuring karma. Energy obstructing karma obscures our power. It doesn't let us exhibit our full power of the soul. And deluding karma is the Mohaniya karma, which obscures our faith and conduct. So this is the king of all the karma. Deluding karma is the king of all the karma, and that one we have to get rid of first. Like I said before, once we get rid of this, the remaining 3 karmas, knowledge obscuring, perception obscuring, energy obscuring karma, goes away within 48 minutes. And that happens at the spiritual progression stage of 12. And once we attain Kevala Jnana, once we get rid of these 4 karmas, that is called Kevala Jnana, absolute knowledge. That means, the soul can perceive everything what is happening in its own knowledge. It just reflects. It knows, what is happening in human beings' mind, when they know what is our previous life was, and when we're going to liberate, everything just reflects in the knowledge. That means we all have that kind of power in our knowledge. That means we all have all these virtues as a pure, powerful soul. But because of all these karmas, because of all the interaction we keep doing and bringing this karma, that gets obscured our pure virtues, and that's what we have to do effort to get rid of these karmas. So the 4 destructive karmas we looked at. Now the 4 non-destructive karmas, aghati karma, those are pleasure and pain producing karma, vedaniya karma, lifespan determining karma, ayushya karma, then the physic determining karma, nama karma, and then the status determining karma, gotra karma. So these are called the non-destructive karma. What is the difference between destructive karma and the non-destructive karma? The difference is destructive karma, as we saw, destroys or the obscures our virtues, soul virtues, while non-destructive karmas, they do not obscure soul virtues, but it affects the body and body's associations with the external things. So for example, pain and pleasure producing karma, vedaniya karma, that is happening in the body, right? Whenever we have a headache or pain in the stomach or anything happening in our body, that is all coming because of the vedaniya karma coming to surface and giving its fruit. As a result of that, we have that kind of feeling, the senses in our body. Pain could be pleasure. We feel so good. My body is so feeling good now. I'm swastha. I don't have any disease. I don't have any pain. I don't have any problem. All this is because vedaniya karma is coming to surface and giving its fruit. lifespan determining karma, the Ayushya karma. What that means, Ayushya karma is the one that decides how long we're going to live in this life. So we brought that lifespan determining karma from the previous life to see, what kind of life I will have and how long I'm going to live. So same thing in this life, when I pass 2/3 of my time of my total life, I'm going to bring this new lifespan determining karma to myself that will decide how long I'm going to live in my next life and what kind of life I'm going to bind. Like, am I going to be Manushya, human being? Am I going to be hellish being? Am I going to be heavenly soul? Or am I going to be animal, Tiriyancha soul? All that thing is decided with this lifespan determining karma. And that is again associated with the body. Physic determining karma, the nama karma. Nama karma is nothing but what type of body I'm going to get. Am I going to be male? Am I going to be female? How tall I'm going to be? What will be my total, health, and how my 5 senses, what kind of senses I will have, my bone structure, everything is decided by this nama karma. And again, it's associated with the body. And the status determining karma, which is a gotra karma. It's a family. What type of family I'm going to have? Which family I'm going to be born. All that thing is decided by status determining karma. And under that, I have all the subtypes, how many subtypes we have. Since we don't have much time, I won't go through the subtypes of all these things. But basically, non-destructive karmas are the one that are associated with the body and its association outside the body. It does not affect soul's virtues. And most important thing is, in non-destructive karma, we do not have to put any effort to get rid of it. It will just go by itself. For example, destructive karmas, knowledge obscuring, perception obscuring, energy obstructing, and deluding karma, we have to put effort. Like knowledge obscuring, more we study, more we memorize, more we start working, getting rid of, respecting all the monks, nuns, and spiritual teachers and gods, and all that thing is helping us to getting rid of knowledge obscuring karma, because we are putting effort in there. Deluding karma is nothing but all these passions, anger, ego, deceit, greed. Once we understand karma theory, once we know how we can work on our passions to bring a state of equanimity, that means we have to put effort there. So all these 4 destructive karmas, we have to put effort to get rid of it. But once we get rid of that, the remaining non-destructive karma by itself will go away when the lifespan determining karma goes away. So Arihanta Bhagwan are the one that they have gotten rid of these 4 destructive karmas. As a result of that, they have attained absolute knowledge. But now, based on their lifespan, they have to live, and then they will, after the life determining karma goes away, lifespan determining karma goes away, they will liberate and they become Siddha Bhagwan. So that's the basic of karmas, 8 karmas and their effect and what do they do. It's much more detailed, but I'm just going to stop right here because we have a few more slides to cover. This is the one chart summarizes everything about the karmas, qualities of liberated soul, types of karmas, and its effect. So here in the middle, that's the soul, pure soul, like we all have. And then the soul has all these 8 virtues: infinite knowledge, infinite perception, perfect faith and conduct, infinite power, unobstructed bliss, eternity, formlessness, and the complete equality. All these are nothing but soul's virtues that we all have in our pure form. But because of the karmas, it gets obscured, all these qualities, and that's what we are exhibiting right now. And that's why we go through the cycles of birth and death, and whatever is happening to us is because of the effect of this karma coming to surface and giving its fruit. So for example, if I get the anger right now, why it's coming to me is because of my mohaniya karma, deluding karma coming to surface, and it's kind of bringing that anger, ego, deceit, greed, all these passions, and fear, or any kind of likes, dislikes. All this is coming because of my past mohaniya karma, deluding karma that was in stock, came to surface and give its fruit. As a result of that, I am doing this anger, ego, deceit, greed. The instrument, the external stimulus could be different. It could be person, it could be situation, it could be event, anything else could be there. But that's not the cause of my anger. That is just the external instrument. In reality, internally, in inner science, what is happening internally is nothing but that mohaniya karma, deluding karma is coming to surface and giving its fruit. As a result of that, I'm exhibiting that anger in me. But now that is bhava karma is coming to me. And now if I can really watch myself and say, and understand the karma theory, I can say, I can continue to be in the state of angry and react, or I have a choice at that time to stay in the state of equanimity, to understand, hey, these feelings are coming, it is a temporary, it comes and goes, I'm just the observer, I'm just the witnesser, I just watch and let it go. If I can have that choice at that time, so we start getting rid of that karma and start manifesting, bringing this pure conduct, pure bliss and peace, all that thing is coming to us. So basically, it is our choice in each and every situation what we can do to purify ourselves. Same thing, getting rid of knowledge, obscuring karma, doing more of worship of knowledge and gurus. Perception and knowledge, they go together. So like a perception happens first and then the knowledge comes there. Then the power, I have infinite power in me, but because of my knowledge, power obscuring karma, I have a limited and the restricted use of energy. Feeling producing karma, because all the sensual pleasures and pain I have is nothing but my vedaniya karma. Feeling producing karma is coming to surface. Once I get rid of that, I will have unobstructed bliss. Age determining karma, lifespan determining karma, which is the cycles of birth and death. When I get rid of that, I attain eternal, I become eternal, I attain eternity. Formlessness, soul does not have any form. Because of the body determining karma, because of the nama karma, I have senses, body and structure. And then once I get rid of that karma, I become formlessness, arupi, without any form. Then the status determining karma, high and low status in the family, in the community, is because of this status determining karma. And when I get rid of this, I attain complete equality. There is no more high and low anymore in myself. Infinite knowledge, knowledge obscuring karma. When we get rid of that, we attain kevala jnana, in the pure knowledge, infinite perception, and so on. So this basically summarizes, the whole kind of karma theory in the form of single chart. So we looked at very high level, about the karma theory, how we bring the karma to ourselves, and what happens to us when we have the bondage. Now we look at application of karma theory, glad acceptance. How we can bring the glad acceptance by understanding this karma theory. So the essence of karma theory is, as we sow, so shall we reap, right? Tit for tat. Whatever we do, we have to suffer. There is no one else but me, I. Whatever I have done, I have to suffer. And based on the intensity of karma, more intense I have passions, it will stay with me and I have to suffer. I have to go through it, pain or pleasure, but I have to go through it. But if it's not that intense, then it will come, it will just give a little bit fruit here and there and it will go away. But I have to suffer, I have to go through it. As we sow, we shall reap. Whatever we receive today is fruits of our past karma. So this is very, very important. There's nothing, no one is doing that. Why am I getting COVID? Why am I getting this kind of disease? Why am I getting so kind of award? Why am I getting honor? Why am I getting degrees? All these things is because I have done something in the past that is coming to surface and giving its fruit because of that. And whatever I do today, those are the karmas I'm going to take with me. And that's what I have to, go on the cycles of chains of these karmas again and again and again. So whatever I have, it is fruits of my past karma. With firm conviction in doctrine of karma and understanding the cause and effect, acceptance of situation, event, people happens very easily. So this is what the main thing is. If we accept, if we understand, if we imbibe, if we have faith in there, then it will be very easy to accept the situation. We can let it go, we can embrace it, and we don't blame on the situation, on the people, and we just say, okay, it's me, I'm doing it, and if I faster I accept it, it will be easier for me to get over and move on and not bring the new karma to myself. So in unfavorable situation, we have a choice either to take revenge or to forgive and accelerate the cleansing process. I decide at that time, and I can only decide if I have the firm conviction of doctrine of karma and understand what is going within me. To let go with understanding and practice glad acceptance. So in favorable situation, we have choice. One of these we can do, definitely. Instead of reacting automatically, we can respond with love and compassion, with kindness, with understanding, with embracing situation and just letting it go. And that's how we can develop the glad acceptance. Glad acceptance is the key to handling life situations well. It brings elevation, positive energy, peace and harmony, and happiness. So by understanding the karma theory, we will develop this glad acceptance, glad embrace, and we just can imbibe these virtues in us, even though they are as manifested in the form of body and all that thing, but we can feel that energy within us. We can feel that peace and harmony within us. We can feel that happiness within us, and we can start, if we ourselves are self-compassionate, we can be compassionate to others. If we ourselves are happy, we can spread that happiness around us. So our journey starts with our own purification. If we don't accept the situation, what happens? Undesired event. In undesired event situation, we display state of, if we accept the situation, we'll display the state of tolerance, but if we don't accept, we'll exhibit the state of anger. In the uncertainty of life situation, we will turn into adventure, while if we don't accept, it will turn into fear. In case of bad behavior of others, what it will happen? If we accept the situation, that will turn into forgiveness. Otherwise, if we don't accept that, it will turn into hatred. And if you look at the other success, instead of getting jealousy about it and trying to do something to pull other people down, but if you just promote, we just inspire with it, if we accept that other success, otherwise it will turn into jealousy. So these are just some of the example what happens when we gladly accept. All the bad qualities will start going away and the virtues will start blossoming. So now, will glad acceptance lead to inactivity? Is it like a inert? Is it like, oh, my life is going to be without any kind of activity or anything if I continue doing just the glad acceptance every situation? So will that lead to inertness in my life? So the enlightened one, self-realized one, they ask question, what is the goal of our life? Is it a peace or happiness, or to engage in mind, body, speech activities, reacting in every situation? What is our goal? Are we going to bring peace to ourselves, or we want to be always stressful, always in the contest, in comparison, in competition, or engaging mind? That is what we have to decide first. And if we yearn for to experience absolute peace, and the indulgence in the activities of mind, body, speech will certainly reduce. And from the spiritual perspective, this is the virtue, not dullness, not laziness. So we ourselves can feel, we ourselves can see the practicing glad acceptance, if it's bringing peace and happiness within ourselves, if it's reducing our stress, if we are radiating energy, that means it's not the alert. This is not the inert activity. This is not the inactive. Actually, it is leading, bringing peace and happiness to ourselves and not the dullness. So the glad acceptance derived from the this is very important, awareness of the soul. It has to be there, a higher purpose. Why am I doing it? I'm doing it because I want to bring the peace. And that will only happen if we are connected to ourself. We are connected to our true self, because the true self, our soul, has all these virtues, and it will start manifesting in ourselves when we do the practices of awareness of the self, and that will lead to peace and life of full happiness, which is coming from within. So this is not the inactive life of glad acceptance or inert life, but it's actually bringing true virtues in ourselves. And this is my last slide. So these are quotes from my Gurudev, Puja Rakesh Bhai. He is a founder of Srimad Rajchandra Mission in Dharampur. He is an ardent devotee of Srimad Rajchandra, who was like about 150 years ago. He was same time frame as Mahatma Gandhi. He was a spiritual teacher of Mahatma Gandhi also, and he was a self-realized saint, reformer of Jainism, and a remarkable poet, philosopher of late 19th century. He gave the world a rich heritage that guides generation of seekers. So Puja Rakesh Bhai, he's a devotee of Srimad Rajchandra, and he has given a lot of this whispers, Sadhguru whispers, and I really loved it, and I thought I can share this with you all, which is apt to this topic. So for glad acceptance, change your attitude. To change your attitude, change your concept. So it comes down to our faith, our concept. If we change our concept, automatically it will reflect in our glad acceptance attitude. Don't hide, justify, or pretend. Just accept your flaws to begin and accelerate the cleansing process. The only cause of worry and complaint is non-acceptance of what it is. And the timely equanimity leads to powerful annihilation of karma. So these are all related to karmas and the glad acceptance. So I thought I could share that with you. So that was my end slide. That was the last. So it's about 6:53 right now here. Sorry, I kind of rushed a little bit, but hope you got something out of it and it was useful to you. So if any more question, I can take some questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Parekh, for a detailed lecture. Very nice one, madam. Really,
Thank you.
very systematic, very scientific, and you have detailed talk on this, the entire karma theory, starting from what is karma, how karma is something different in approach. In Jainism, vis-a-vis other systems, you have tried to define that, and again, you talked of the dynamics of karma, and again, you saw the causes of bondage, and also you have shown how to get out of those bondages, and also you talked of what happens when the karmic particles get attached to the soul. So very scientifically you have dealt this issue, and I'm thankful Philosophy Family is really thankful to you for your great effort, madam. Thanks a lot. Now, because we have it as Professor Ghosh, and I want some comments from him and some suggestions and some questions from him. Then we'll move to Professor Pramod Kumar Das, who is really working on the karma theory with reference to Bhagavad Gita, and he has a lot of depth on karma theory. Well, we will move to Professor Das later, but we'll move to Professor Dr. Nandit Ghosh, sir, for his observations and questions.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. I must congratulate Professor Sushma Parekh for giving such an elaborate discussion on Jaina theory of karma. And I have just 2-3 clarifications. Now, in your speech, you have at times used Tirthankar, at times Arhat, and at times Kebali. So are they different layers of realization, self-realization, or they are used as synonymous? This is one clarification. And secondly, second thing is this, that you have made a distinction between destructive karma and non-destructive karma. So I think we can't transcend non-destructive karma, as you say, but we can transcend the destructive one. Now, if that be the case, is non-destructive karma of Jainism is same as the prarabdha of Hinduism? So we have to bring that distinction. And lastly, when you are talking about the glad acceptance, which is the realization of the soul for peace and harmony, that is it this sort of realization is only personal realization, or it can be extended to the social harmony? That is these three clarifications I need from you. Thank you, madam.
Sure. So the first one was, Arihanta Bhagwan, Tirthankar Bhagwan, and the Kevali. Are they synonymous, or are they? What's the difference between them, right? So the Arihanta Bhagwan, they're actually the same. All they are same. Tirthankar Bhagwan. So when we get rid of these 4 destructive karmas, Nanavarniya, Darshanavani, Mohani, Antaray, they become Tirthankar. And also, if you have a Tirthankar Nama Karma, then you call Tirthankar. But for me, there are millions of people, they attain liberation, but they don't call Tirthankar. They can liberate. But only 24 Tirthankar Bhagwan we have in Jainism for this aura, because they had a Tirthankar Nam Karma. But they all, Arihanta are the one who get rid of the 4 destructive karma. Tirthankar are the one who have gotten the Tirthankar Nama Karma. And the Kevali is the same thing. When you get rid of these 4 destructive karmas, you attain a Kevala Gnan, absolute knowledge. As a result of that, you are called Kevali. So Kevali, Arihanta, and Tirthankar. Little bit difference, but they all are same. That was your first question. The second question was non-destructive karma and the prarabdha, right? Are the same or different? So prarabdha is nothing but, whatever we have accumulated our karma, and because of that, whatever is coming to surface, it is called the prarabdha, or because of my karma coming to surface and giving its fruit. But that is, it could be non-destructive karma coming to surface, or the destructive karma coming to surface. It could be either of that, right? We looked at non-destructive karmas are associated with the body and the family and all that thing. What kind of body I get, what kind of family I have, what kind of pain and pleasure I'm getting in my body. All that thing is related to body and non-destructive karma. But that is also coming from my prarabdha because of my past karma. And the destructive karmas, knowledge obscuring, I don't understand everything, why I have to read so much, or people have pictures memory. It's because of all that karma coming to surface and giving is because of my prarabdha, because of this is how I brought my karma to myself, right? Same thing, Mohaniya karma is the worst of all. Why am I getting, see the same situation, one person gets very angry and the other person does not. Why? Because of my karma, that Mohaniya karma coming to surface, and that person does not have that much Mohaniya karma. That person has very mild conduct deluding karma. Because of that, he does not exhibit that kind of, like a saint, monks and all that thing. They're always in the peaceful state, no matter what happens to them, because they have less knowledge, less deluding karma coming to surface and giving their prarabdha. Deluding karma is less. So to answer your question in short, yes, the prarabdha is associated with both destructive karma and non-destructive karma. And the third question was related to glad acceptance, right? Whether it's only the self-realization, it happens to us, but does it impact to others or not, right? So sure, the journey starts with our own first. If we ourselves are not pure, if ourselves are not attained self-realization, how we can help others? So the first thing is, of course, we have to develop ourselves. We have to purify ourselves. And once we manifest those virtues in ourselves, peace, love, kindness, we radiate. We start radiating. It just happens, that aura. We talk about aura, right? That aura is nothing but the radiation of that energy that is manifested within us, which affects other person automatically. So when we go closer to these enlightened ones, to the masters, we feel peaceful. Now they are radiating that. They are helping us with their power, to realize us. They will not give you, according to Jainism, God does not give you Samyak Darshan. God does not give you moksha. We have to put our effort. But the self-enlightened one, self-realized one, they have that kind of power, manifested that love and compassion. Because of that, they are helping others to attain that self-realization. So it does have both benefit. But first journey starts with us.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Parekh, for a beautiful response. But one thing I couldn't understand while you responded to the first question, you have said Kevali, Arihant and Tirthankaras, they are synonymous. But you talk of 24 Tirthankaras and you talked of Tirthankara Nama Karma, something like that. What is that actually? And how that differentiates the Tirthankara from a Kevali or Arihant? Well, Arihant and Kevali can be understood to be on a equal footing, but Tirthankara is much more elevated sort of personality or something like that. Do you see something like that? Because we have.
Yeah.
Is it
Correct.
so? Is it
Correct.
so?
So Tirthankar Bhagwan, there are only 24 soul. They attend the Tirthankar Nama Karma. So in that point of view, Tirthankar is the highest level as far as the honor is concerned, right? But in terms of purity of the soul, the same. They have gotten rid of 4 destructive karma as a result of that purity, that 4 virtues: knowledge, perception, conduct, faith, and power. All that thing is same in all of them. Arihanta Bhagwan, Tirthankar Bhagwan, or the Kevali. But in terms of honor, in terms of, Tirthankar Bhagwan, they form the Tirtha. They help people, they give you sermons, they give you deshana, they advise people, they show the path, how to attain. Like that, Tirthankar Bhagwan, other Kevali, they cannot do that, because Kevali, they do have attained the state of Kevala Jnana, but because they don't have a Tirthankar Nama Karma, so they do not form that Tirtha, 4 Tirtha, Shravak, Shravika, monk and nuns, all that thing, they don't form that 4 Tirtha, they don't give you sermon. Heavenly God and Goddess, they come down to celebrate 5 auspicious event of Tirthankar Bhagwan. That does not happen to general Kevali. General Kevali, they do have purity, but they don't have that kind of Nama Karma, Tirthankar Nama Karma.
Thank you. Thank you so much, madam. So beautifully you have tried to explain this. In terms of purity of soul, all stand on the same footing. But that Tirthankara Nama Karma, that gives us a special respect and honor to the 24 Tirthankaras. And that's how they are different. Thank you so much, madam, for your beautiful response, for your clarity in your thought. Well, I request Professor Pramod Kumar Das to have his observations and pujas for both Srinivasan Iyer and Professor Parekh. Over to Professor Pramod.
Pranam to all of you. I have a glad acceptance to both of the speakers. I gladly accept the valuable contents of both of the speakers. One thing is that when we are discussing about Jaina system and Bhagavad Gita, or other systems of Indian philosophy like Sankhya Yoga system, as Dr. Srinivasan ji highlighted, Sankhya Yoga system and Bhagavad Gita, and Professor Susma ji highlighted on Jaina system. The basic difference between Jainism and other systems, especially Sankhya and Bhagavad Gita, is about the concept of soul. According to Jaina system, as Madam said, and it is also there in the text of Jaina philosophy, that soul can be attached with karmic particles, and that is bondage. And what is freedom? freedom is the freedom of the karmic particle, freedom of the separation of between these two. Karmic particles should be free from soul. And also Jaina system says that there is a size of soul. A big animal has a big soul. So these are the things, these are the points about Jaina system which do not match the conception of soul according to Sankhya Yoga and Bhagavad Gita. According to Sankhya Yoga and Bhagavad Gita, soul is not at all attached with karmic particles. In Sankhya Yoga, it is said that Purusha is detached from Prakriti. Your anything in Prakriti and its products, they belong to Prakriti. Purusha is absolutely free, Nitya Mukta, ever liberated, pure consciousness, Sudha Chita, Nitya Mukta, Sudha Chita. That means which, and Satyam Abadhitam, which cannot be bound, which cannot be determined, which is absolutely free. That is Purusha in Sankhya Yoga system, and that is also soul in Bhagavad Gita. Nobody can kill you. You can't kill anybody. Soul cannot be killed by any empirical means or by any way, because there is no death to soul.
Mm-hmm.
There is no bondage to soul. Bondage is a bondage has its phenomenal significance, empirical significance. But when we talk about soul, soul is transcendental. Soul is absolutely free. But in Jaina system, it is said that the karmic particles are attached with the soul, and that is bondage, and freedom is the separation between these two. But I learned many points from Professor Sushma ji. I frankly say that I did not have such detailed knowledge about Jaina theory of karma. One thing I liked that is the space and time dynamics of spatio-dynamics and temporal dynamics of karma. That, as Madam said, that karmic particles are so subtle that they can remain hidden as our vasana, and they can come to the surface. So this is the spatio dimension of a karmic particle that can remain within, hidden, and that can come to the surface. And when karmic particles come to the surface, they become functional. They create karma, and that leads to bondage. This is about space. Then what is about time? Regarding time, Madam said that to destroy the karmic particles, one may live millions of lives. This is time dimension. And a Keval Gyani, a man of wisdom, can override it, can get rid out of it, overnight. So it can be, one can be free overnight, and one cannot be free even he lives thousands of lives, millions of lives. So this is the secret of karmic bondage. That karmic particles are so powerful that they can rule in any spatio-temporal dimensions. And that determines our personality, that determines our character, that determines our past life, that determines our present life, and that determines our future life. Madam beautifully said that every moment is a moment of a karmic reaction. We are all products of our reactions. We say that we are doing action, but exactly it is the reaction of our anger, reaction of our any propensity, even reaction of love also, reaction of affection. So man should be free from such reactions, and man should learn how to respond. This is the difference between reaction and response. When we are responding a situation according to the situation, that is the real exercise of free will. Otherwise, we are not free if you are reacted upon or by something.
Mhm.
So when we are doing something, we should ask ourselves that whether I am reacting or responding. If I am reacting, then I am an animal. If I am responding, then I am a man. If I am free from these reactions and responses, then I am divine. So these are the three possible dimensions of human transformation. Whether you are reacting, whether you are responding, whether you are just doing your duty for Lokasangraha as the Niskam Karma. Even if you respond, don't possess that don't take that credit. Suppose you are responding, that is better than reaction. But I responded this way that nobody can respond. So this leads to bondage. Even if you respond very rationally, you should not have that sense of agency. You should be free from that. So you should be free from all reactions. Similarly, you should be free from all of your responses, because whatever you will possess, that you will carry that luggage to the end of your life, and that is the life circle. So don't have your luggage with you. Be a free man. Luggage means the luggage of bondage, luggage of karmic particles. Be a free man. Do your duty in the sense of duty. Another difference, madam, just 1 minute I shall say. Regarding theory of karma, there is a difference between Jaina system and Bhagavad Gita. Jaina system says, don't create karmic particles. Don't create unnecessary karmic particles that will put you in bondage. Bhagavad Gita inspires, do your karma, choose your karma, do your swadharma, do, and know the art of doing. Yoga karmesu kausalam. Know the act, and that is karma yoga, as Dr. Srinivasan said. Do your karma, create your karmic particle, but that karmic particle should help you transform in your life. The message is same. Here it is same. It is said in positively. In Jaina system, it is said, don't create karmic particle, because that will be your bondage. Try to avoid it. Try to be. Therefore, Jaina ethics about non-violence, there is no comparison. Jaina ethics of non-violence, that don't take food at night, because don't have light at night, because the mosquitoes or the insects will be attracted and they will be killed. So even if you commit a mistake unknowingly, that will accrue to your karmic bondage. That will be also your bondage. So knowingly or unknowingly, don't commit any mistake at all. So this is very purest form of ethical paradigm, as Jaina system said. But Bhagavad Gita is very normal. It is for a common man, that if you don't understand any scripture, if you don't understand any ism, just do your swadharma according to the context, and don't have any shreya, any attachment, any credit, any unnecessary expectation for your karma, then you will be liberated. So I just shared my view, but I have glad acceptance to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your response. Very nicely, you have tried to say certain things beautifully. And one thing comes to my mind. Well, Jainism, well, they don't deny karma altogether. What they disregard is for the destructive karmas. What Madam has said is knowledge obstructing karmas. We should not go with that. Energy obstructing karmas. We should not go with that. Perception obstructing karmas, we should not go with that. We should not go with the deluding karmas. So these are the destructive karmas which should avoid. So once they are avoided, you are having a positive karmas. Not that Jainism says don't do karma. No, it's not something like that. It is something to get rid of the destructive karmas, the unnecessary karmas. So, and Madam has beautifully classified knowledge obstructing karmas, we should not do. Perception obstructing karmas, we should not do. Energy obstructing karmas and the deluding karmas. These are poisonous, and one should be avoiding all this to elevate in the standards of purity in the soul. What I could understand from Professor Parekh. Well,
Yeah, just one clarification. Just wanted to say that, Jainism doesn't say that you don't do karma in the sense that good actions, good service. That all brings the auspicious karma. So if you look at our spiritual journey, instead of doing bad activities, you want to do good activities. You want to do the service to humanities. You want to do good karmas. Karma means action here. That will take us from inauspicious to the auspicious. But that is also karmic bondage. Even though we are doing good activities, in reality, the transcendental point of view, we are bringing good auspicious karma to ourselves, which will help us to elevate, which will help us to take to higher and higher self, which will bring more and more auspicious karma, and that will start taking us towards higher and higher path. And ultimate goal is to get rid of all the karmas. So for example, when you have to fly, right? You are taking a flight. There's a runway. The plane has to go on runway for some time to pick up the speed, and then and only it will go up. So same thing, we need all these good activities, auspicious activities, act of humanity, compassion, helping others, to stay away from the inauspicious activities. And then as we do more and more good activities, all Jainism says that don't get stuck in that just good activities and stay dispassionately and do all the good things. Now your goal is the higher goal, that you want to get rid of these good activities also and attain liberation. And to do that, that's what the context was. Ultimately, we have to get rid of all the karmas. But one person, as you and I, we cannot go directly to that high level right away, because we have to first get rid of all the inauspicious activities we are doing to auspicious one. And from auspicious, we have to go to the pure, which is nothing but getting rid of karma. So that's just, I wanted to give some clarification. Oh, you are muted, sir.
Madam. So we need to even get rid of even the good karmas. Okay, it's auspicious karmas. But even that too has to be bracketed out. So it's again a new dimension. It's a new thing we should learn from the Jaina system that we learn.
One thing.
Professor Das.
One thing. Okay, I agree, and everybody is one with this philosophy of Jaina system. My point is, when we are speaking of karmic particle, and every karma has its karmic particle, and it is attached with the soul, if the soul is attached with the karmic particles of the series of our actions, then who is there to monitor the situation? Who will be free from what? because the soul, the higher authority is in bondage. Number one. Number two, but this problem is not there in Bhagavad Gita. This problem is not there in Patanjali Yoga, Sankhya Yoga. There it is said that soul is the presiding officer. Soul is the vice chancellor. Soul is Brahman, the final authority, and these are all the empirical managements. There is bondage, liberation, attempt for getting liberation, following the different courses to get liberation. These are the empirical courses. This course is not required for the master, who is absolutely free, Nitya Mukta. But in Jaina philosophy, there is an interaction between karma and soul. If soul is affected anyway by the karmic particle of both good karma and bad karma, in both good karma and bad karma, madam, very interestingly it is said that in Bhagavad Gita it is said, your good karma is also your bondage. In Jaina system we explained that, as Rao sir also highlighted, that Jaina system does not say to avoid good karma. One should do good karma. So good karma exerts good karma particles. Bad karma exerts bad karma particles. So both these karmas have their particles and they are attached with the soul. In Bhagavad Gita it is said, even your good karma is also your bondage. If you have the sense of agency that I am doing this good karma, I am the owner of my charity. If you have that sense, even your good karma will have also your bondage. Iron chain and the golden chain. Both are chains, but one is made of iron and the other is made of gold. So how do you see this? If the soul is always connected with the karmic particle, then who will make free whom? That is the point.
Yeah, no, very good. See, according to Jainism, the soul, there are aspects of Dravya, Guna, Pariyai. It's Sat. Sat is, it has a pure entity, which is a pure soul. Pariyai is the modification that is happening, which is nothing but our, all these impure feelings coming and going and coming and going, right? Pure soul, the pariyai, and the virtues, the guna, virtues, Jnana gun, darshan gun, then bliss, purity, all that thing are the dravya, pariyai, guna, yut, sat. So that's what the definition of the whole soul itself is. So according to Bhagavad Gita, in there, when we talk about the soul, it's just completely separated the temporary feelings, the impure feelings, the pariyai, the modification happening, it is happening is as a part of the soul there. But in this form, in the worldly form, those are all the impure. And our effort is to purify that. And the Karman particles that are there, they're completely separate. Those are non-soul. Those have different characteristics. When we say it gets attached to the soul, doesn't mean they become one. Like, for example, we have iron, and we have iron particles. And we have magnet and iron particles, right? So the magnet attracts iron particle, and it stays there. But doesn't mean it becomes iron, right? It doesn't mean it becomes magnet. You can separate it. So similarly, soul, because of that pariyai, the modification happening in there, which is temporary, because of that, we are attracting these Karman particles and getting attached. Means I don't want to say it become as a part of the soul. It is still separate. That's why we can separate, right? That's why we can get rid of it. if it was part of the soul and it becomes soul like that, then we will never separate it. It is temporary association which gets disintegrated afterwards based on our activity. And that's why it's very important. Who is responsible for getting rid of these impure feelings? If we don't accept that I'm always pure, and there is no impure feelings in me, then who is responsible for those impure feelings? Soul. Because of that karma is separate. Karma is just the instrumental factor, like a catalyst. It's just coming there. But at that time, soul, if exhibits, hey, because of my influence of that karma, okay, so we understand external person influencing me. If person says something to me, because of him, it's happening to me. We can say that. But karma, we cannot see it. It's subtle. So because of that effect, but in reality, this is our effort, soul's effort to understand that modifications happening in my own pariyai is temporary. It's because of that instrumental cause, which is karma, karman particles, the mohaniya karma is coming to surface and making me, angry at this point, which is my modification, which is my temporary state. But as a pure soul, if I can stay in the state of witness and let it pass, let it go, that impure state, I am manifesting pure state at that time. And that's how we are purifying. So only difference I can see is in Jainism, Dravya Guna Pariyai, Yut Sat. All three dimensions are taken. While in Bhagavad Gita, I'm not really the big, I haven't studied in detail or anything, but we have done 1 year course of Bhagavad Gita. We have gone through all the adhyayas and all that thing through Rakesh Bhai, my guru. So there, it's mainly Vedanta. It's mainly taken only as a Nitya. I'm a Nitya, pure, powerful soul. And the temporary, the modification is not accepted. That's the only thing I can think of. I don't have full knowledge of it, but according to
Madam, thank you, madam. But just one clarification. This is not a question at all. I want to learn. Because you are an expert in Jaina system. Who is Professor Sushma ji? Are you that soul? Are you that parjaya? Who is speaking now? Who is discussing about soul according to Jaina system? But this answer is there in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
I am pure consciousness. This is true. I am a father. That is equally true. This is true with a form. That is true without form. I am both form and formless. I am both unmanifest and manifest. So I witness myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is wisdom. That is wisdom. The wisdom means you witness yourself. You witness your parjaya. You should be aware of the fact that you are under this parjaya or that parjaya in this parjaya with this intensity. You should be aware of your diverse manifestations of your personality. Personality means of that totality. So
True.
This provision is there in Jaina system or not? So actually,
I just want to.
Well, Professor Ghosh,
another thing.
Yes.
Now, when we say guna parjayavat dravyam, will it be applicable to only physical substance or to psychic substance or soul substance, as you say in case of Jainism? But if that be the case, then this space-time relativity, the space-time situation will be applicable to the soul. So soul cannot be a pure one. That means it cannot transcend itself, the limits of the soul. That is what how Professor Das is trying to say, that in Gita this type of situation doesn't arise because of the situation that it is already a pure element, a pure consciousness. So how
Correct.
Jainas react to this? Thank you.
Correct. Okay. So each and every substance has its dravya, guna, paryay, right? Each and every substance. So we talked about soul and the body, right? Body is non-soul. Body is matter. Body is pudgal. So when you talked about Professor Sushma, that name is given to my paryay of this body. That you all can see me as a Professor Sushma. You don't see my soul, or no one can see. Soul is formless, right? Sure. So, but when we have a soul and we have a body, so each one has its own dravya guna paryay. Each one has its own dravya guna paryay. So whatever you are seeing, it with respect to body has its own dravya guna paryay. Matter, parmanu, is its own pure form, and all other things. I talked about this is like a audaric particles coming together, forming a body. So that is a distinction between, the soul and its own dravya guna paryay, and the matter, its own dravya guna paryay. So that's a distinction, but we don't see in our daily life that soul is separate from body. When we see, oh, I'm Sushma, that means that's me. But in reality, like Sir said here, that wisdom, that witness, that separation that we have all the time. When someone calls me Sushma, someone calls me Professor Sushma, someone says something to me, actually, who are they saying to? This is my paryay, this is my body paryay, which is a matter, which is a soul, which is a pudgal. But in reality, I'm separate from that. So that vision we should have all the time. The same thing now, I'm talking about the paryay of this body, matter, which is a separate from soul. But now let's go to the soul. According to Jainism, the soul has also same kind of paryay, purity, which is dravya. Guna means all these virtues, knowledge, perception, bliss, and all that. They're infinite virtues of the soul. I just talked about 8 of those here. And then paryay, modification. So each and every guna, virtues, are going through modification all the time. So right now, in the worldly soul, these modifications are going because of the karmic influence and all that thing, these are getting into impurities, like you have feelings of anger, ego, deceit, greed, attachment, aversion. All that thing is happening in soul's territory, but it's the paryay, it's in the paryay. So our whole effort is nothing but to purify that paryay thing, whatever is happening. And the way we purify, that is called the bhava karma. And the dravya karma is those karman particles. They don't come inside the bhava karma. They are completely separate from each other. So our whole effort is, what can I do to purify myself, that my paryay happening in the soul. And once I understand that, okay, glad acceptance, the understanding of, whatever is happening to me is because of my influence of my past karma coming to surface and giving its fruit. But now I have a choice. If I be in the state of witness, if I can separate myself from these impure feelings, which is a temporary, then that impure feeling starts manifesting into the pure form. And once the paryay is pure also, that there are no more, because of the karmic matters are not there anymore, that's where you liberate. So according to Jainism, dravya, guna, paryay, yuta, sat. And that paryay, whenever we talk about body, Sushma, name, family, parekh, and all that thing, is all associated with my non-living matter. That's a nama karma. That is giving me all these things. That's not me. I am pure soul. And the impure feeling that I'm getting is within the soul, but that is all temporary. And that's what I have to put effort to purify that. And once I purify that, even the liberated soul, they have their own dravya guna paryay, but their paryay is all pure all the time. Because there's no impact of all these karmic matters there. Karmic particles, the karmas are not there anymore. Even in the human form, When we get rid of this deluding karma and four destructive karma, we have 4 other non-destructive karma. So what happens at that time? At that time, there is a mind, body, speech activities there still, but there is no impurities in terms of the feeling. The passions are not there anymore. So you will bring the karmas to yourself, but it will not stay with the soul. It will come for one samay, it will stay with soul for one samay, and it will get rid of in one samay. It's called the Iryapatik Ashro. It just comes and goes. It does not impact you. And we can stay in that state, passionless state, for long, long time. I can give just the example of Mahavir Bhagwan. The 24th Tirthankar Bhagwan just happened 2600 years back. He attained absolute knowledge, Kevala Gnan, at age 42, and he liberated at age 72. So for 30 years, he lived in the human form, just 2600 years back. So at that time, what happened? He did not have any other karma, in the sense he did not have the destructive karmas, Nanavarni, Darshanavani, Mohani, and Antray. But others, he had body, the name determining karma. He had Ayusha, Ayusha was 72 and a half years. So he had still the life determining karma, Vedaniya karma. He had all those things, but it does not dilute. It does not it does not bring any impurity to the soul, because the Mohaniya karma is gone completely. So he's always in the pure form. It will not, cause any kind of damage to his pure soul. The pure soul has fully manifested. I should make it very clear. Dravya, Guna, Pariyai. Dravya and Pariyai. Dravya, with respect to what we talk in Hinduism or Vedanta or Bhagavad Gita, Nitya, I am a Nitya, pure Nitya soul. That is the Dravya section of the Jainism. The Pariyai is the one which is impure, right? That impure feeling, where it's happening. How can you justify the impure feelings, where they are coming from? They are part of your, Pariyai, modification of the soul. That virtue, my pure bliss, always blissful, I'm blissful, but why do I feel that kind of, angry at this point? Is it happening in body? Is it happening in mind? It is happening in the soul, but in the pariyai, which is a temporary, which is impure because of that other karmas associated with me. But my right now effort is to purify my pariyai, my modification, my transient nature, my transient thing of the soul association, which is Dravya Guna Pariyai. I think that's what is missing in this conversation. When we talk about pariyai, we talk more about the body and the name and all that thing, but that is all matter, and the soul has its own pariyai. And in Jainism, that pariyai is impure in the worldly soul, and we have to work on that, making it pure. Once that purifies, then the soul is liberated.
Madam, I think we can also use Buddha's example for this same thing, the Parjaya, but when he attained Nirvana, but he died at a later stage. But this period, as Tirthankar Mahavir you are referring to, but they can be equated so long as they are here. Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity for being here, and this is a wonderful forum. Love for everyone's passion and discussion. I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Professor Sushma, excellent presentation. I am really happy that you have presented it very nicely and wonderfully, that I have to study a lot in karmic theory of Jainism, not only in karmic theory, but also in other aspects of Jainism. Thank you very much, Professor Sushma.
Thank you, dear. Thank you.
Thank you so much, madam. So technical, very beautifully you have tried to explain, so detailed and really interesting, because you have gone into the depth of the Jaina theory of karma, and we have to learn a lot from about Jainism from you. Well, in the future lectures, we wish that you will deliver talks on Jainism, taking other issues. So lot of learning, because lot of technical things you have said, well, we have never studied, because you have devoted totally to the study of Jaina literature. You have given a lot of things for bringing these things to our students. So really helpful. We are really thankful to you, madam, because with all the available books, well, I don't find the terminology that you have used with respect to Jainism. We have learned a lot from you, madam. Thanks a lot. And we wish that you will come again with other theories in Jainism and we'll discuss in this forum. Really helpful to all of us, madam. A big thanks to you, madam. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Well-
Thank you. I also enjoyed Bhagavad Gita session from Srinivas sir. It was very amazing, very enlightening, very uplifting. Thank you. I look forward to more interactions in the future and we will be in touch. Thank you.
well, there may be people who want to say something. But it's not. It's already 9:15. I beg your pardon. Well, somebody wants to say something. 1 or 2 minutes we can have. Somebody who wants to say something. Well, anyway, so Professor Das, should we end up with a formal vote of thanks? Professor Das. Yes.
Sir, you give. Please, you give.
Okay, thank you, Professor Das. Well, at first, I would like to thank Dr. Srinivasan Iyer sir for a very clear presentation. Well, we had certain questions for him, but the time doesn't permit because he's always with us. Well, we can have a detailed discussion over WhatsApp and all. We should have taken certain questions for him, but because of the paucity of time, we are not taking the questions. Now, very beautifully, Professor Dr. Srinivasan has tried to put his things on the Karma Yoga, starting from the dimensions of karma and what is Karma Yoga. And he made a reference to the Patanjali's yoga on which he is working. So very detailed discussion he has made. So thank you so much, sir, for your effort, for being so nicely justifying your thesis. Thank you so much, sir. So I also thank Professor Susma Parekh for giving new dimensions to our learning of Jainism, because we studied Jainism and our study was restricted to whatever given in the text. And as Dr. Srinivasan Iyer has said, a lot of things have to be learned about Jaina theory, and rightly he has said. And the things, as you suggested, the technicalities involved in understanding Jaina karma theory and the liberation aspect that you talked of, very technical, very scientific, and it is because you have involved yourself so deeply into the issues, you are so comfortable in getting the technicalities step by step and putting before us so detailed, in a so detailed manner, in a so scientific manner. And really, I'm thankful. Philosophy family is really thankful to you, madam. And we look forward for presenting issues on Jainism in the future lectures. Thank you so much, madam.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to, we learned a lot from you, madam, really speaking. And I would like to thank Dr. Ranjit Ghosh, sir, who raised 3 beautiful questions, really beautiful, and that initiated the response section, and to which beautifully Susma madam tried to answer. And I should also thank Professor Pramod Kumar Das, sir, for his comparative analysis of Jaina theory of karma with the theory of karma that we have in Sankhya Yoga and Bhagavad Gita. So very nicely he has tried to bring, try to establish a parallel and also a dissimilarity, and to which even Professor Parekh tried to explain, give her own standpoint, give her own defense for the Jaina theory, and rightly so he has done it so nicely, so beautifully. And we are really thankful to her and also her guru. Lot of salutations to her guru, because her guru is a devotee of Rajachandra, who was again a guru of Mahatma Gandhi. So great, they are spiritual, great souls, and being a devotee of Rajaguru. So we are really, this session has really gone divine. Thank you so much, madam. So I thank all other question writers, even Kailash Chandra Maharana sir, who has written a question, and even Sravani Mishra madam, who raised, who said really inspiring lectures from both the speakers, and also Patnaik sir, very senior member, for being connected with us. Well, he should have given some, should have